Okay. We're looking at, to give you 2 points that you can generally find for an exponential function whose graph goes through those 2 points, as long as those 2 points are both on the same side of the x-axis. Now, see a little bit more about that. Let me advance this. See what I'm writing. I can make sure I'm writing where I need to. Okay. There's an analogy. Of course, this is something you might have to do on the midterm. So how many have taken the midterm? I know at least one person has. Nobody? Well, I'll be checking this afternoon if you've taken it. Okay. And I won't be able to grade them. I can do some preliminary grading by tomorrow. But I'd like to grade them all as a batch so that I'm sure that I'm being as even and fair as possible in the grading, okay? If I grade some on Friday and some on Tuesday, gets messed up. But if you want to know generally how you did, email me through Canvas. And I give you an estimate of how I think you did, okay? As I look at them as soon as I get them, and I can usually get a pretty good idea of what your letter grade is likely to be. Okay, at least I can tell you, well, it's no worse than a C. Or definitely at least a C, but looks like maybe a B. Okay, I can give you that kind of feedback. Okay, well, anyhow. You want to find a linear function through the points 2, 7, and 5, 3. Of course, you got formulas for it, but you know that you can use y equals mx plus b, right? And you can plug the x and the y components in. You use x equals 2 and y equals 7. Then you plug in 2 for x and 7 for y, and you get this. And 5, 3. Y is 3. X is 5. And you get this. Now, from this equation, you solve for b, and b is going to be 7 minus 2m. Then this equation, plugging this in for b here, gives you 3 equals 5m plus 7 minus 2m. And that rearranges, I'm not going to go through all the details, that gives you 3m equals something's wrong with that. I'm sorry, it should be, that's 3m. This is -4, sorry. So m is -4/3. Now you can draw a fundamental triangle between these points and see that the rise is 3 and the run is -4. So the slope is -4/3. So that's in agreement with your fundamental triangle. Fundamental triangle maybe looks like this. And you've got 3 here and -4 here. So you got -4/3. And you should know how to do all that because most of you still have the midterm to take. Okay. Well, having solved for m, then you can plug that back in to either of the equations and solve for b. I'm not going to go through that. You know how to do that. At least you knew how to do that when I quizzed you on it a month ago. Okay. So I assume everybody knows how to do that. If you don't, well, you really want to make sure you do. So, okay. Now, if we want to find exponential function, so the points 2, 7, and 5, 3. Well, an exponential function, and you should know this, just like you know y equals mx plus b, and you would have used it on your homework. So if you're doing your homework in such a way that you make careful note of the essential things you need to solve the problems when you're not going to be able to consult open math or any other resource or a quiz or test, you want to make a note of this. Okay, so you should know today, since you've done the homework and people did pretty well in the homework, that the formula of an exponential function y equals ab to the x. I think your book uses a lowercase a, or uses an uppercase a, so nobody confuses it with their backward apostrophe value of that. Of course, we've got b there too, so that stuff anyway. So you got to understand, without the backward apostrophes, these are just symbols. Okay, you have this. Well, you know how to do this, or at least you did last time I looked. Then you should know how to do this. At least write it out. You plug these coordinates into this equation, and you get the equation that's going to be 7 equals a b to the 7th power. And that's a b to the 2nd power. And then you plug 5 and 3 in, 3 for y. And of course, x is the power of b. Okay, and x is 5 in this case. Now you have two equations with two unknowns, a and b. You solve them. Okay. They have to know a little algebra, you have to understand exponents. My advice on the easiest way to solve this, you can always solve this for a. Well, I'm going to do it that way. Okay. Let's solve one of the equations or the other for a. Okay, so if we solve this equation for a, what do we get? And then what do we get when we plug that into this equation? So once you start, I'm going to give you a minute. I want you to show me how you solve this equation for a. And show me the steps, so I'm sure you're following the rules. And of course, you always want to show me the steps. Don't just write down an answer on quizzes or on tests. Show me how you got it, because that's the first thing I look at, and that's really what I grade. Okay. Okay, now I ask you to solve for a. Okay, well, let's just do that over here. So we can really see the steps. You're going to solve for a if you divide by b squared. If you're trying to solve for a and a is multiplied by something, you want to divide both sides by that something. So you get 7 over b squared equals a b squared over b squared. And of course, b squared over b squared is just 1. So this says that a equals 7 over b squared. So it's just one step to solve this for a. So really, in some ways, it's going to be easier to solve this system than it is to solve this one. And this one's easy. Okay. This may be a little more easy, a little less easy. Depends on how you see it, but it's easy once you see what to do. And I guess my question is, how did you get this right on your homework? You can do this, okay? I'm wondering how that happens. Anybody has any insight? Tell me how you we're able to do it without doing this and without using something inappropriate, like some kind of a calculator online or something that does functions. If you really don't want to do that, because if you do, you don't learn it. And then you have a test on it and you know where you end up, okay? You don't want to do that. I don't want you to not do well in this course. Anyhow, A is 7 over B squared. Okay. Now you take this, and just like you plug this value of B in for B here, and you got this equation, which you could then solve for M. You plug this in here, and it gives you 3 equals A, B to the 5th, where A is 7 over B squared, times B to the 5th. Now you really, at this point, if you see B to the 5th here and a B squared here, you should know that that's going to end up giving you a B cubed. But we want to write out the steps because a lot of people got here and then couldn't go any further. And if you got here, that's good because you only got a couple of simple steps left. You got to know what those steps are. And that just goes back to your basic algebra 1. Okay. So make sure you have all this straight. Okay. So we get we could write this as 3 equals 7 over 1 times B to the 5th over B squared. And in this case, we could write that as 3 equals 7 multiplied by B times B times B times B times B divided by B times B. Now, you really want to make sure you understand this now, today, and for the duration of your mathematics education, okay? You can't get very far if you don't understand this, because you need to understand the rules for exponents. You use the rules. You have to understand why the rules are so. If I multiply the numerators here, I get 5b's, right? That's not 5b, that's 5b's multiplied. That's b to the 5th, right? Okay. If I multiply the denominators, I get b times b. So that this expression is the same as this expression. And of course, this expression is exactly what this expression means. So now, this expression gives us 1. I'm not canceling, I'm telling you that when you divide something by itself, you get 1. Okay? Please check your masks. I'm looking down below nostrils. Okay, now 3 then equals 7 times b times b times b, which is 7b cubed. And let's make sure that this thing's over far enough, the watermark doesn't mess up the recording. Okay. Well, I've gone into way more detail than I thought I was going to have to, because you should understand. Number one, that when you have two numbers to different exponents and you're dividing them, you subtract the exponents. You subtract the exponents because in this case, you have 5 of these up here and 2 down here. You can group 2 of them and get rid of them and leave you 3. Okay? You need to understand that at this level. If you don't understand that this is the source, you're going to tend to get confused on the laws of exponents. You're going to tend to misuse the rules, and that's going to be fatal. because it's whatever problem you have to be doing. And if too many problems we got to do that, it's going to be fatal to your grade, okay? So you can't be making these elementary algebra mistakes. And the way you avoid making them is understand where the rules come from. Okay, well, anyhow. So we could go directly from this. Well, let's say we could go directly from this without having to go through all this. If we use the rules, we get 3 equals 7b cubed. So that b cubed equals 3 over 7. So b equals, I don't know if I want to write this as a cube root or the 1/3 power, because when you get into radicals, that gets confusing. We just had a section of radicals, so I'm not sure about this writing the radical, although I express. I prefer to work with fractional exponents. It has its own problems. So b is a cube root of 3/7. All right. Now, I got that from the first equation. Solving the first equation and going into the second, okay? The cube root of 3/7 is about 0.4. If you cube 0.8, you get that. If you cube 0.7, you get 0.35. So I'm going to guess, and you've got your calculator. You can take your calculator now and calculate this, right? Actually, on your calculator, you probably want to write this as 3/7 to the 1/3 power. Because the cube root is the 1/3 power. And this is approximately, I'm going to say 0.72 or 73. Yeah, that's probably pretty close. You get it? Somebody's got a calculator now. Okay. Okay, anybody get that? How close did I get? Go ahead and do that. Make sure you know how to use your calculator. Your calculator gives you something that I didn't get. Probably broken. Get a new one. No, seriously, your calculator will check my arithmetic. Okay. Anybody get a result? 1/3 power of 3/7. I guess the question is, do you know how to use your calculator to get this? So we're going to stop for a minute and make sure you know how to use your calculator. Okay? So get that open your calculator, whatever you think, and let me take a look at it. Okay, well, people did okay with that, but it took a few minutes. So we want to make sure that we know how to use the calculator. I assume since calculators get overused in the curriculum, that everybody knows how to use it. But also there was a comment that maybe the Casio calculator doesn't do exponents. But pretty sure it does, but I'm going to check it out. I'll be able to go right away. Exponents are going to be more important on the future tests than they are on the midterm, so I don't think you run into too much trouble with exponents in the midterm. Anyhow, people tell me that it isn't 0.73, actually rounds off to 0.75. And what it is it's really 753. And I know if I'd have thought the cube 3/4, I'd have gotten 27 over 64, which is pretty close to 3 over 7. Anyhow, that's all right. Okay, so anyhow, we got B, right? Now, how do we get A? Well, A is 7 over B squared, right? So we know what B is. So we can do 7 divided by the square of this number, right? So what do you get? It's going to be around 19 or 20, I think. So while you're figuring that out, let's go with this here. Need to look at it. I'm going to rewrite some of it. Okay. Summarizing the steps that we've been through, because it's scattered all over this board. Again, I didn't anticipate we'd have to do quite as much with the elementary algebra. Anyhow, you got the two equations. First equation gives you A equals 7 over B squared. You plug that into the second equation. You get 7 over B squared times B to the fifth. Make sure that you understand the steps of the elementary algebra down to the point of writing B times B times B times B times B over B times B. Regrouping, so you have a B times B over B times B and a B cubed, so that you get this. Then B cubed equals 3/7, so B is the cube root of 3/7, which of course can be written as 3/7 to the 1/3, which is how you're going to put it into your calculator, most likely. Okay. Then you get 0.75. Now I think that the Casio calculator will do that if you just do I'm not sure it'll do this, but 3/7 raised to the 1/3 power. You use this power symbol raised to the power symbol, which you should be familiar with because that's what you use in your calculator, right? And I think the Casio does that, but I'll check it out and we'll go over it if necessary. Okay. Again, probably won't need that for the midterm, but we'll check to make sure that goes right. Okay, well, anyhow, then. You could get 7 about equal to 0.75 or 753 times B squared, okay? And you go to as many significant figures as you think you need. So that B is 7 over 0.75. Which is maybe about 0.93. So B is the square root of 7 over 0.75. It's actually plus or minus the square root, because when you solve a square equal to something, you might get a positive or a negative result. That would be plus or minus the square root of 0.93 if I did that right. And that's going to be approximately 0.97. Okay, so now doesn't seem like it's going to be right. It's going to be oh, never mind. That's not right either. Okay, first of all, 7 over 0.75 is not 0.93, it's like 9.3. The square root of that is about 3.1. So you would get still not going to come out right, but the steps, you know, the process is what I said. There's something wrong with my arithmetic, but anyhow, A is okay. What I did here wasn't right. Be careful in my substitution. I solve for B again. And I need to be solving for A. So we're doing this correctly. Okay, I get 7 equals AB squared. Which is A times 0.75 squared. So that 7 is approximately equal to A times 0.55. If 0.75 squared really is 0.55. So that A is 7 over 0.55. And maybe that's about 11. It's more than that. Okay, it's 12 or 13. Somewhere between 12 and 13. So A is about 13. Okay. So when I plugged in here, I used that 0.75 as my A value and solve for B, which is stupid because this is the value of A. This is the value of B. Plug that in for B. We get square that number, we have this, and we do the simple arithmetic. And we get A is about 13. So now Y is about 13 times 0.75 to the X. So again, for the two equations, solve for A, plug that into the second equation for A, and solve for B, we get the value of B. Then put this number in for B, not for A, and solve for A. You get this number, so the model is Y equals AB to the X, and that becomes 13 times 0.75 raised to the X. Let's see if that makes sense. Okay, we could put x equals 2 in here. See if that comes out somewhere close to the value when x equals 2, which would be 7. So now you've got your calculator. Evaluate that. What's 13 times 0.75 squared? Now it's not going to come out exactly 7 because we've got a round off error here and kind of dismantling. What do you get?
7.3.
Again?
7.3.
Yeah, so you get 7.3. What are we supposed to get? We're supposed to get 7, right? Should be 7. That's not bad considering it's done in my head. If you use your calculator, you got all the decimals. Okay, they'll probably be like 12.8 or 12.9. And then let's just check it. So x equals 5. Y should be about 13 times 0.75 to the 5th. Now, since we're doing a 5th power of this thing that was estimated in the first place, it's probably not going to come out as close as this did. But what should we get? We should get 3, right? Because when x equals 5, b to the x, b to the 5th, when x equals 5, y should be 3. What do you get? Anybody get it? Punch it into your calculator. I think comes out probably closer to 3 than it does to 2 or 4. Anybody get it? What'd you get?
3.
3?
It's like 3.08.
3.0 something?
3.08.
3.08. Okay, well, I kind of believe that because I thought when I did the calculation, I thought it was going to be pretty close. So we should be getting 3. We got 3.08. Since I did estimates, it wasn't that I'm that good at estimating. It was just dumb luck. Okay. But that's how we check it. That's the process. And that's a process that I would hope everybody used, because I'm pretty sure that's what open math tells you to do. Now there are steps in solving these. There are several ways you could solve these 2 equations, but they all come down to the same thing, and the solution is going to be the same no matter what steps you use, as long as you use valid algebra. Okay, so there we have it. Okay.